Hey guys, tonight, we begin with something both adorable and absurdly ceremonial, the bedtime routine of a royal toddler who just so happens to rule one of the greatest empires on earth. Yes, you are a pharaoh, technically still learning to walk straight, but already treated like a living god with a fan club of priests and a wardrobe that could bankrupt a kingdom. Spoiler, you're going to need help brushing your baby teeth, and yes, someone wrote it down in hieroglyphs. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You are born in a palace larger than some cities. The Nile whispers nearby. Stars blink down through open-air courtyards, and somewhere, a priest is already composing a poem about your birth. The midwife doesn't announce your name. That's for the astrologers to determine later, based on the sky, the river tides, and how loud your first cry was. Which, by the way, was apparently divinely impressive. They wrap you in linen finer than a scribe's best papyrus, and paint a small line of kohl beneath your eyes. Not for fashion. For spiritual protection, you are already holy. Your cradle is carved from cedarwood brought in from Lebanon, inlaid with gold, shaped like a tiny sunboat. It squeaks, not because of your weight, but because someone carved it wrong, and nobody dares fix it. Even your cradle is sacred now. Around you, courtiers whisper. Not about your health or your tiny fists, but about what omens your birth brings. The empire's grain surplus, that's apparently connected to how your hiccups sound. One priest is convinced your sneeze means Egypt will enter a golden age. Another thinks it just means someone burned too much myrrh. Your mother, the queen, is watching you closely. She knows how this works. You are not just her child. You're the latest divine sequel, and sequels come with expectations. As for your father, he probably named a festival after you before he even saw you. Public relations is a full-time job when your family tree includes being a pharaoh. In training means your nursery is less rubber ducks and more ritual ducks. Actual ducks too. One is a gift from a Nubian diplomat and lives in a private pond near your window. You like it, even though it's terrified of your ceremonial rattles, which, by the way, are solid gold and shaped like cobras. You chew on them anyway. The nurse panics. The priest just says it's symbolic. But here is the weird part. Your every burp is noted. Literally. Someone is keeping a scroll that documents your digestion. On the 7th day of Akhet, the young Horus passed wind in a most favorable direction. That sort of thing. Academics still argue whether this was religious record-keeping or just bored scribes. Yes, historians are still debating this. The official term is ritualized infancy. But honestly, it feels like spiritual babysitting. You're fed honey, dip dates mashed into a paste, goat milk warmed to the exact temperature of the Nile at noon. And occasionally something they call lotus mash, which smells like it should come with a warning. No one questions it though. If the recipe says a baby pharaoh needs lotus, you're getting lotus. Even if it stains the carpets. And it always stains the carpets. Your first giggle is treated like a divine message. Two priests try to interpret whether it was directed at the scribe or the baboon. The baboon wins. His name is Thuti. He's dressed better than most nobles and has a tendency to steal your toys, which causes a small diplomatic crisis in your playroom. You hit him with a rattle once. The priests called it a powerful omen of future strength. The baboon just sulked for a week, but as you grow, the rituals grow with you. You are no longer just held and admired. You are presented, lifted by the high priest before the temple, shown to the gods as their earthly vessel. You drool during the whole thing, but they pretend it's holy dew. People cheer. Offerings are made somewhere. A statue gets new sandals in your honor. Your clothes become more elaborate, even as you continue to crawl into furniture, linen, beads, embroidered collars. You learn that gold itches when it's hot, and that no one dares take it off you. At least 6 servants are involved in your diaper changes, not because it's difficult, but because there's a ritual order. One chants, one fans, one holds the scented oil, and one carries away the evidence like it's radioactive. And yes, T here is a dedicated master of the pharaoh's comfort. His job is to ensure you don't cry during royal ceremonies. His tools include incense, songs, and a small puppet shaped like Anubis. Honestly, it works. Mostly. You grow up never touching the ground. Literally, you are carried, cradled, and seated on cushions. The first time your foot hits actual dirt is a national incident. They bless the spot. Farmers later claim the soil became unusually fertile. Academics still debate this. Some say coincidence. Others say divine farming powers. Even sleep is a spectacle. Your bed is shaped like a lion. The mattress is stuffed with goose feathers. Every night before you're tucked in, 2 temple attendants chant a protective spell. Another sprinkles crushed lapis under your pillow. You don't understand any of it. You're 2. You just want your duck. But for all the ceremonies, there are still moments of softness. The queen sings to you in a language older than dynasties. A nurse traces stars on your palm and says they belong to you. The moonlight spills across your face, and for a second, you are not a symbol. You are just a sleepy kid who rules the world. You dream of boats, of rivers, of giant cats who talk, and when you wake, here is always someone waiting with a warm cloth, a bow, and a scroll that says, "The Divine One has risen." Section 2. Your first memory of power isn't grand. It doesn't involve a throne or an army. It's simpler. You throw a honeyed fig at your steward, and no one scolds you. That's when it hits you. You don't get time outs, you get interpreted. Everything you do is seen through a divine lens. You walk. Ray has granted the child strength. You trip. The gods are testing his balance. You cry. The sky mourns with him. You burp. Well, they call that the breath of life. Your playtime takes place under colonnades taller than trees. Priests watch from the shadows, pretending not to. They take notes. You're 2.5, possibly 3. Your birthday is debated by historians, and you're already being observed like a comet. Every tumble, every squeal, every moment of quiet staring into a water bowl, recorded, ritualized, archived. Your toys are handcrafted. Ivory animals, spinning discs, a tiny chariot. You're too small to ride. You have puzzles made of onyx and silver, and yet you're still obsessed with poking things you're not supposed to, especially the crocodile fountain, especially when it's sacred. Your caretakers refer to you in the third person, even when you are in the room. The child seeks movement, they say, when you run in circles chasing a cat. The Divine One contemplates nourishment, when you are just trying to sneak a fig from the offering tray. The offering tray, by the way, is not technically for you. It's for the gods. But let's be honest, it's in your room. It's full of pomegranates. You know exactly what to do. That afternoon, a scribe sees you steal from it and hesitates. He looks at the priest. The priest shrugs. Perhaps the gods offered the fruit to him first. No one moves. You chew slowly. Absolute power tastes like warm pomegranate seeds and mild confusion. When it comes to daily responsibilities, you don't have chores. Of course, you have rituals. Morning announcements involve someone standing beside your bed and chanting praises about how well you slept, even if you wet yourself, especially if you didn't. But with that praise comes something less sweet. Lessons. You begin your education far earlier than you'd like. You're barely past the painting phase when your first tutor arrives. His name is K. Emperor, and he has the energy of a man who once argued with a crocodile and lost. He brings scrolls. So many scrolls. Papyrus sheets filled with tiny bird-heavy hieroglyphs that all seem determined to fly off the page. You're not expected to read them, not yet, but you are expected to sit still while he reads them to you. Loudly, with feeling. Today's topic, the divine lineage of Horus. You're told that you are his living incarnation. You nod. You're not entirely sure who Horus is, but you know that every time someone says his name, people bow lower. The lesson continues. You learn about Ma'at, order, justice, balance. Then you're asked to identify it in a painting. You point to the falcon. It's the wrong answer. But KM writes it down anyway and mutters, perhaps the child sees a deeper meaning. Outside the palace, Egypt breathes in the rhythm of the Nile. Flood, plant, harvest, repeat. But within your walls, time runs on incense and anticipation. You're being raised not to be a boy, but a concept, a walking theology. It's exhausting. Still, you find your moments of rebellion. You refuse to sit on your small throne one morning. Simply flop down on the alabaster floor and make a sound somewhere between a sigh and a honk. The priest of Thoth pauses. The courtiers freeze. Your nurse covers her face. And then the priest says, he has descended to the earth to humble himself before the gods. You are carried to your throne on a cushion. That's the lesson. Never underestimate the power of theatrics, even accidental ones. As weeks pass, your routines tighten. You're trained to hold a reed pen, to copy simple glyphs, To recite prayers you barely understand. You are told not to laugh during them. You fail. Often the penalty. Nothing. The priests just interpret it as joy blessed by Hathor. At night, as you're laid into bed by attendants who chant softly in Heliopolitan verses, you whisper something that makes your caretaker flinch. Why can't I just be a normal boy? He doesn't answer. Not right away. Instead, he gently presses an amulet to your chest, a carved eye of Horus, smooth and warm from his hands, and says, because Ra lit your soul like a torch, and now we all walk by its light. You blink up at him. He smiles like someone holding a secret too heavy to share. Academic consensus still debates what childhood looked like for Egyptian royalty. Some argue pharaohs were isolated from normal play. Others believe they interacted freely with palace workers. But there's one thing scholars agree on. They were never allowed to be ordinary, so you learn to live with it. To smile when addressed, to answer in full sentences, to say thank you when someone calls you, light of Upper and Lower Egypt. Even when you're just trying to pee in peace. But every now and then, in the quiet between rituals, when the perfume fades and the scrolls are packed away, you sneak out to the sun-drenched hallway. There, barefoot on cool stone, you chase your shadow. It stretches before you, long and wild, like it's running ahead into a future you haven't learned to fear yet. Section 3. You don't remember your first toy, but everyone else does. There's a whole record of it etched into a wall somewhere near the private courtyard. A ceremonial rattle shaped like a lotus blossom, gifted by a foreign dignitary, blessed by 2 priests, and promptly dropped into a pond by you. They retrieved it. Of course they did. It's now kept in a velvet box like a sacred relic, even though it still smells faintly of frog. Your playroom isn't a room, it's a garden, partially walled, shaded with sycamore and date palms, filled with chirping hoopoes, and a rotating cast of extremely well-behaved ducks. You are 2 feet tall, wrapped in fine linen, and wielding a stick with far too much authority. The world is your sandbox, and your caretakers hover like nervous astronomers, watching a star in its wobbliest phase. Today, your favorite companion is a baboon named Minu. He's been trained not to steal fruit. He hasn't learned that part. Minu wears tiny jewelry and occasionally decides he is king, climbing onto your golden toy chest and shrieking with regal pride. You try to shriek him. This quickly turns into a contest that the priest of silence deeply regrets. Among your many luxuries, you've been given a miniature chariot. It's carved of cedar, with wheels that squeak like scandal and tassels dyed with imported indigo. You love it. You also can't ride it alone. That doesn't stop you from trying. Once, there was a very small, very controlled crash into a ceremonial tree. The tree recovered. The chariot was blessed again. You were mildly scolded, which, in royal terms, means someone suggested a nap. Your toys are part entertainment, part instruction. There are little carved figures of gods, Thoth, Bastet, Anubis, all placed neatly in a box like divine action figures. You act out scenes no one taught you. A cat god arguing with a crocodile, a scribe getting turned into a beetle. The priests watch through the lattice and write everything down. You're not sure if it's for posterity or just very niche gossip. There's also the ball, not just any ball. It's wrapped in leather, stuffed with papyrus, and painted with sacred patterns. You are told it was inspired by one played with by a prince in the 4th dynasty. It's round-ish, it bounces unpredictably. You love it more than politics. One day it rolls into a priest's foot during a lecture on celestial order. You giggle. The priest pretends it's an omen of cosmic playfulness. It's amazing how much theology can bend to humor a toddler. Not all your toys are metaphorical. Some are practical. You have stacking blocks, shaped like obelisks. Puzzles with sliding tiles that spell out simple prayers. A clay model of the Nile that lets you pour water and flood the miniature fields. You are told it teaches agricultural cycles. Mostly, you just like watching the little fake granaries float away. Despite all the gold and craftsmanship, your favorite toy might be a stick. Specifically, a twisted palm branch you found in the royal garden. No jewels, no carvings, just a stick. You name it Commander of the Ducks, and brandish it with authority. For 3 days, the entire palace refers to the stick by name. It's blessed. It's given its own holder. One priest suggests writing hymns to it. The high priest of Re gently vetoes that suggestion. Academics today still debate the purpose of royal toys. Were they truly for play, or a form of symbolic training? Did they reflect the child's personality or reinforce divine messaging? The answer is probably yes, to all of it. Because in your world, nothing is ever just what it seems. A figurine is also a god. A chariot is also a metaphor. A game of Senate isn't just a game. It's a rehearsal for navigating the afterlife. You're still figuring out what that means. Mostly you just like when the pieces clack. Sometimes, you play with other children. Noble sons carefully selected for bloodline, loyalty, and the ability not to drool on your sandals. They're nice enough, though one keeps calling your baboon, monkey, poo. You don't correct him. You just give him the broken Senate piece. He doesn't realize it's cursed, probably, in these moments, amid the laughter, the scraped knees, which are promptly treated with resin and panic, and the whispered dares to steal figs from the temple kitchens. You almost forget you are more than a child. You feel normal, unburdened, free. But freedom in the palace is always temporary. A servant eventually appears, silent and serious. Time for lessons. Time for ceremony. Time to be polished back into a symbol. You hand over Commander's stick with great ceremony. He is retired with full honors. You bow. The ducks quack approvingly. And just like that, the garden becomes quiet again. The ball is placed back on its pedestal. The baboon is escorted to his quarters, with fruit bribes. The miniature chariot is wiped clean of glory. You are led back through marble halls, past murals, where your ancestors smite enemies the size of hippos, and into a world where play is sacred, but never private. You glance back once, at the shadow of a stick, the glint of a forgotten figurine, and think, just for a moment, that maybe the gods play too. They just hide it better. Section 4. Your day begins with breakfast, but calling it breakfast feels wildly inadequate. It's not just a meal, it's a ritual, a performance, and sometimes, a political gesture wrapped in pomegranate syrup. You're seated on a small golden chair, carved with lotus blossoms, and tiny scenes of your supposed future victories. You're 3 years old and not entirely sure what future victories means. But you do know that this chair squeaks if you bounce at the right angle, and that alone makes it sacred. Servants glide into the chamber, balancing silver trays like acrobats in slow motion. There's warm goat's milk infused with honey and fig, bread with caraway seeds, slightly overbaked but blessed, so no one complains. A small bowl of dates, carefully halved and checked for scorpions. This happened once, and became a national teaching moment. And of course, the daily egg. Not just any egg, a goose egg boiled, sliced, then decorated with edible gold leaf. You once asked why it sparkles. They told you, because you do. You are not alone. A priest sits nearby, mumbling blessings into a cup of something steaming and medicinal. Your nurse stands just far enough to pretend she's not watching you chew. And your food taster, a man named Benutu, who has the eyes of a hawk and the digestion of a crocodile, already took a bite of everything an hour ago and lived to nod about it. The meal starts only when the first hymn finishes. You're not supposed to hum along, but sometimes you do. Loudly, off, key. One time you added animal noises. They said it was prophetic. Another time, you burped mid-blessing. They said the gods were speaking through you. Each item you eat is discussed, sometimes out loud, sometimes whispered behind fans. Was the barley grown under the right star? Were the lentils harvested during a favorable flood? Does this melon taste slightly too foreign? Should it be reported? You reach for your favorite, a slice of flatbread drizzled with date syrup, and topped with something squishy and mysterious. The cooks call it moon cheese, which you suspect is just cheese that got left out too long. You love it anyway. It smells like rebellion. Halfway through the meal, a servant appears with a scroll. It's your breakfast reading. Today, it's a poem dedicated to Maat, the goddess of balance and cosmic justice. It's illustrated. You turn the scroll upside down. The priest nods solemnly. He sees the world from angles we do not. The truth is, you are not just eating. You're absorbing symbolism. Bread represents stability. Honey is divine sweetness. Milk is the nurturing strength of Hathor, the egg rebirth, even if you are mostly interested in poking it until it rolls off the plate. Some mornings include guests, high-ranking officials, foreign ambassadors. That one prince from Nubia who tried to share your melon slice and was almost escorted out for culinary overreach. These meals feel more like theater. Everyone watches how you eat, what you touch first, whether you use your fingers or the tiny ceremonial fork gifted by a visiting craftsman from Cyprus. And then there's the fig incident. You still hear about it. You took a bite from a fig, made a face, and tossed it gently, into a fish pond. The fish liked it. The priests. Less so. For 3 days, there was a debate about whether you had rejected a divine fruit. One priest said it was a metaphor for rejecting false sweetness. Another suggested early signs of divine dietary preference. You were just 3 and didn't like how squishy it was. Historians today argue whether royal meals were true banquets or stylized fasts. Some believe they reflected cosmic balance. Others think the food was mostly symbolic, and eaten later by servants. None of them, however, address the real mystery: why everything smells slightly of incense, even the melon. Once your appetite fades, or you get distracted by the bird carved into your spoon handle, you signal the end. No one dares clear the plates until your fingers stop drumming. That's the rule. It's been the rule since the time of your great-great-grandfather, who once refused to finish a date and declared war on a city the same afternoon. Coincidence? Probably, but no one's taking chances. You are wiped clean with a cloth dipped in rose water. Your hands are anointed with oil that smells like expensive trees. A tiny servant collects your crumbs with a feather fan, not for cleanliness, for preservation. They will be buried in a sacred jar near a temple. You ask why. They say, so the gods know you ate well. Your nurse smiles as she combs your hair. You're not allowed to leave the table with honey on your face. Not because of decorum, but because last time you did, a cat followed you into the throne room and refused to leave for a week. It was blessed. It was also mildly cursed. And just like that, breakfast ends. Not with a belch or a sigh, but with a priest announcing, the Divine One has been nourished. Let the learning begin. You wish that meant more figs. It usually means another scroll. Still, as you are carried away in your little chair, you glance back at the table one more time. All that food, all that ritual, all for you. Well, mostly for the gods, but they're not the ones with syrup on their chin. Section 5. You are 3 years old and already dressed like a deity preparing for a parade. The process begins shortly after breakfast. And no, you don't get a say in your outfit. You have opinions, strong ones, mostly about colors and whether or not your sandals should have duck embroidery. But those are more offerings to the discussion than actual choices. It takes 6 people to dress you, sometimes 8, if the day includes public ceremonies or important naps. The headdresser, a woman named Nettie, approaches you like one might approach a mildly annoyed lion cub. She carries your tunic folded over her arms as if it's a scroll of state secrets, which, in a way, it is. The tunic is made of linen so fine it whispers when touched. It's been bleached in the sun, soaked in lotus milk, and ironed using hot stones by someone who probably meditates beforehand. You're told it comes from special flax grown near the sacred pools of Heliopolis. It feels like air and sounds like expectation. You stand patiently while they layer it on, murmuring blessings under their breath. The priests nearby nod approvingly, as if your arms sliding into sleeves confirms the alignment of the cosmos. You try not to yawn. Nettie notices. The Divine One is conserving energy, she says, tucking in the fabric. Next comes the jewelry. A small necklace of gold beads and faience tiles is slipped over your head. Each piece represents something: the sun, the Nile, a protective cobra, your favorite animal. You chose the duck again, causing weeks of theological review. There's a tiny scarab carved from lapis lazuli at the center. You're told it watches over your heart. You like it because it's shiny. Rings go on your fingers. Anklets are adjusted. A belt with miniature falcons is tightened around your waist with exactly 3 loops. Not 2, not 4, the priest insists. You once asked what happens if it's wrong. He turned pale and muttered something about historical precedent and plagues. Then comes the eye paint. Kohl, dark and smooth, applied with a steady hand. You squirm. It tickles. The makeup priest doesn't blink. He's done this for 3 pharaohs and a prince who had hiccups during the entire ceremony. He's unshakable. The black lines are drawn out from the corners of your eyes, long and dramatic. Not for fashion, though you do look fabulous, but for protection against dust, against spirits, against people who might think a small child in a golden tunic isn't the living vessel of Horus. Academic debates still circle around whether the eye makeup worn by royal children was purely symbolic or had practical medicinal properties. One papyrus claims it wards off the evil stare. Another suggests it keeps bugs out. You personally think it's for the portraits. As the final touch, your sandals are brought out. Soft leather, dyed white, with gold stitching that sparkles when the sun hits it just right. You hate them. They squeak. You prefer to go barefoot, but the high attendant insists. A pharaoh's feet must not touch common ground. You ask if that means the floor is common. The room goes silent. You are carried to your sandals on a linen-covered cushion. On ceremonial days, a headpiece is added, a miniature crown shaped like a lotus, sometimes with a little golden uraeus, the rearing cobra symbol. It's slightly heavy. You once tilted your head and it slid off into your breakfast milk. This incident is still discussed in the kitchens with equal parts horror and pride. Once dressed, you are presented. Not to the public yet, but to the divine. A priest holds a mirror carved from bronze. It's polished, slightly wavy, and shows your reflection like a small god caught in rippling water. You look into your own eyes, and don't quite recognize the serious little person staring back. Then, the checklist begins. Blessings, check. Linen offerings to the shrine, check. Protective amulet placement, double check. Emergency fig, in case of tantrum. Always, the morning assembly won't start without you, and technically, you don't even speak in it. You just show up, look regal, and occasionally point at the ceiling while someone interprets it as a prophecy. Today, you're scheduled for a short walk through the East Wing, a wave at the scribes, a blessing over the granary ledger, and possibly a nap, depending on how intense the breeze is. You are told this is the light schedule. You briefly consider retiring, as you're carried out into the palace corridors. Every step is greeted with bowed heads. You are a vision. You are light incarnate. You are also sweating slightly under the neck beads, and your left sandal is squeaking again. But you hold your head high. You've practiced this. Look calm. Look serene. Do not scratch your nose during blessings. Do not sneeze directly on the high priest. Do not chase the palace cat even if it stares at you disrespectfully. Somewhere along the hallway, a scribe drops his stylus. It rolls toward your foot. Without thinking, you bend and pick it up. The room collectively gasps. The high attendant breathes sharply, but you simply hand it back to the scribe and say, "It was close to my sandal." For the rest of the day, everyone whispers that the Divine One acknowledged labor. A new hymn is drafted. You were just trying to help. Later, when the layers come off and the linen is folded away, your nurse asks if you liked your outfit today. You shrug. "Too many beads," you say. She chuckles. "Next time, just 3 fewer beads," she promises, knowing full well there's a council for bead distribution and none of them believe in minimalism. You curl into your nap pillows, coals still faint on your lashes, and drift into dreams of sandals that never squeak. Section 6. You don't have teachers. You have priests with scrolls, tutors with titles longer than their beards, and advisors who smell faintly of incense and importance. Lessons begin shortly after dressing, while you are still blinking off your morning yawn and wondering if the sun is always this aggressive. You sit on a tiny throne made of polished wood and ivory. The chair itself is older than most of your ancestors. A small footstool helps you not dangle awkwardly, though you still do, just a little. Km. Your primary tutor, starts the lesson by bowing so low, you can see the top of his bald head shimmer. Then he unfurls a scroll with a reverence usually reserved for sacred cats or fresh pomegranates. Today's subject, the myth of Osiris and Isis. You already know the basics, but Km. Insists on repetition. So the truths may carve themselves into your spirit like words on stone, he says. You nod solemnly. What you don't say is that you remember it mostly because the part where Osiris gets chopped up is a little too vivid. The lesson continues. You repeat lines about cosmic balance, the rightful rule of order, and how a good ruler must uphold truth, justice, harmony. It all makes sense. Even if the scroll is upside down and you are mostly trying to flick a speck of dust off your lap without getting caught. Km. Corrects your posture again. The Divine One must sit like the stars, high, balanced, and always watching. You try. You shift. You slouch 2 minutes later. He sighs. Reading hieroglyphs comes next. You're good at recognizing the animals. The owl is your favorite. You once drew it backward and caused a week-long debate among the scribes over whether you had created a new sacred symbol. An omen, one priest claimed. A mistake, said another. In the end, they compromised. An intentional innovation. You were just bored. After writing comes math. Pebbles are placed before you in a neat little line. You count them in a sing-song voice. The high accountant, present for reasons no one explains, nods approvingly every time you say 10. At 11, he claps. You begin saying 11 more often than necessary. Then there's etiquette training. You're taught how to hold a cup without offending the gods, how to greet a foreign envoy without blinking too fast, how to tilt your head just enough to imply wisdom, but not so much that you appear confused. You practice with a mirror. You look serious. You look noble. You look like a small child pretending to be a statue. Occasionally, you are tested. Not with quizzes. Heaven forbid you ever write your own answers, but with observation. How you respond when Km. Perfects a mistake in reciting a lineage. Whether you notice when your lunch offering contains 2 instead of 3 figs. These are lessons disguised as daily life, or perhaps daily life disguised as lessons. Scholars today still argue about how pharaohs were educated. Some say it was strictly religious, focused on hymns, rituals, and memorization. Others insist it included military strategy and engineering. One thing is clear, they were raised to rule, not reason. You're taught certainty, not curiosity. Which is awkward, because you have a lot of questions. Like, why are there 9 different names for the sun? Why do birds get their own gods but not frogs? Why does the priest's wig smell like sandalwood and regret? One day, you ask what happens if Mat E is broken. Khayyam proposes. He looks at you for a long time, then carefully rolls up the scroll. Then the world unravels, he says. And it must be stitched together again, by someone strong enough to do so. You don't know what that means. You just nod, like you do when things sound important but feel too big. Afternoons often include physical training. A soldier with a beard like a lion's mane teaches you to balance while holding a wooden sword. You are not supposed to fight, not yet, but you are supposed to look commanding. You swing the sword once, and nearly hit a ceremonial vase. The soldier catches it mid-air. You both stare at it. He winks. Never happened. He says. You decide you like him? Tea here is also music. A harpist arrives, plucking gentle chords while you practice reciting royal proclamations. It's meant to soothe your nerves. You use it as background for composing a song about the palace cat. It rhymes barely. And then, just before your scheduled, quiet reflection time, the astrologer arrives. He's old, so old you are convinced he predates the moon. He smells like parchment and mystery. He carries a star chart as wide as your bed and twice as wrinkled. He places it on the floor, points to a constellation shaped like a crocodile, and says, "This one governs your breath tonight." You look at the sky through a polished obsidian disc. He asks what you see. You say, "Stars." He smiles as if that's the wisest thing anyone's ever said. He writes it down. "The Divine One sees clearly," he announces. Later, you hear they changed the name of that constellation to the crocodile who is seen. These lessons aren't just for you. They're for the people who watch you, serve you, follow you. You are being shaped into something larger than a child. Larger than a person. You are being made into a story, and stories must be perfect, or at least, convincing. At the end of the day, you return to your private chamber. A single oil lamp flickers. The scrolls are tucked away. Your tutor bows low, says something about divine patience, and backs out of the room like he's afraid of offending the furniture. You sit for a moment, quiet, the weight of 1,000 lessons pressing gently on your shoulders like a silken cloak. You draw a falcon in the dust. Its wings are uneven, but it looks happy. And for now, that's enough. Section 7. You don't go to temples, you arrive at them. The palace courtyard opens into a path paved with polished stone, flanked by palm trees, and guarded by 2 giant statues of your grandfather, one smiling, one suspicious. Your sandals tap rhythmically as you are carried down the path in a small ceremonial litter, shaded by linen embroidered with protective symbols and birds that probably represent solar truth or breakfast. You are not sure. The temple ahead looms like a question waiting for an answer. Colossal pillars carved with stories older than your tutors rise into the sky, each one home to painted gods with eyes that seem to follow you. The scent of frankincense and lotus hits before you even enter, like a sacred fog machine announcing, "Divine child approaching." You're greeted by the high priest, a man who looks like he was born inside a scroll. He bows so low you worry. He might snap in half. The Divine One blesses the house of the gods with his presence, he intones. You smile politely, even though you're 3 and mostly thinking about whether there will be honey cakes after the offering. Temples are not playgrounds, but that doesn't stop you from treating them like one. You've memorized every crack in the floor, every echoing hall, every room where the air changes just enough to feel like a whisper. Your attendants follow like a slow-moving bouquet of nerves, clutching jars, linens, and a ceremonial fan no one has ever actually used. Today's ritual is a symbolic inspection of the temple granary, which, as far as you're concerned, means looking at a pile of wheat and nodding while someone chants very long sentences about divine abundance. You try, you really do. But the wheat smells funny, and there's a lizard on the ceiling that is doing very exciting things. Your distraction doesn't go unnoticed. The high priest shifts strategies. He invites you to the sacred inner sanctum, normally off-limits to almost everyone but the gods, high officials, and once, a very determined cat. They open the great doors with a theatrical creak. Inside, it's cooler, quieter, hollier. You step onto alabaster tiles that were scrubbed that morning while someone whispered protective hymns. There, on a pedestal of gold and lapis, stands the statue of Amun. Ra, it's enormous. Majestic. Slightly chipped on the elbow, but they say that happened during an earthquake, not poor statue maintenance. You're invited to offer a flower. A priest hands you a lotus. You place it at the statue's feet. A bell rings once. A scribe writes something furiously. Someone whispers, "The child favored the left side." Theories will be formed. Then comes the ritual washing of your hands. A servant pours perfumed water over your fingers, while another dries them with linen so soft. It probably counts as divine itself. A priest says a blessing over your palms. Another blesses the towel you sneeze. A third priest blesses the sneeze. You're reminded not to touch anything sacred unless told to. Which would be easier if everything didn't look so very, very touchable. You once patted a lion-headed goddess on the snout. That lion statue still has your tiny palm print. It's considered auspicious. Sometimes the temple visits include animal rituals. Today, there's a crocodile. Not loose. Fortunately, it lives in a shallow pool surrounded by votive offerings, carved fish, amulets, tiny boats. You are told its name is Happy Tut, and that it dreams prophetic dreams. You toss a painted pebble into the water. Happy Tut ignores it. The priest interprets this as a sign of deep reflection. You think he's just sleepy. Academic records suggest that young royals visiting temples served as living links between the divine and the earthly realm. Some accounts even describe them as walking prayers, which sounds beautiful until you realize how exhausting it is to be reverent all the time. You're handed a papyrus scroll with a blessing written in blue ink. You are to recite it in front of the altar while holding a small alabaster jar. You get through the first line. Then you hiccup loudly. A pigeon coos somewhere above. The high priest blinks. The divine one signals fertility, he says, nodding wisely. After the ritual, you are escorted to the temple garden. This is your reward. The priests say it's for reflection. Your nurse says it's so you don't bounce off the temple walls like last time. You run between papyrus plants, chasing dragonflies. The garden is quiet, save for the gentle splash of fish in stone pools and the distant mutter of temple songs. You find a frog. You name it Neb. It stares at you, unblinking. You tell it a secret. It hops away. That's how you know it's loyal. You sit beneath a date palm while your attendants fan you lazily. A servant brings a cup of cool hibiscus tea. You sip, pretending it's a sacred elixir. Somewhere inside the temple, they begin chanting again. This time, not for you. You're off duty. For now, you watch the sunlight catch on the edge of a statue's crown. Everything glows. You feel small. Not in a bad way. More like, you're a bead on a very long necklace the gods have been wearing for centuries. Still shiny, still part of the design. Your nurse kneels beside you, brushing dust off your tunic. Ready to go back? She asks. You nod, but before you leave, you glance once more at the temple doors. Big, heavy, important. One day, you think, you'll walk through them not as a guest, not as a child, but as the one in charge, the one giving the blessings. One day, just, maybe not right after nap time. Section 8. Siblings are supposed to be playmates, partners, in crime, fellow conspirators in sneaking extra dates from the royal kitchen. Yours are also minor deities with competing claims to the universe. So, that complicates things. You have two older half-brothers, sons of other royal wives. They wear tiny crowns that tilt slightly and speak in the overly polite tones of people raised to smile through power struggles. They always call you Little Horace, which sounds affectionate until you realize it's a reminder of rank, of prophecy, of the inconvenient detail that one day, only one of you gets to rule everything the sun touches. They're not mean, not directly, but they like to remind you that they're taller, faster, and once heard the high priest say their names first in a morning prayer. You throw a grape at one of them during lunch. He ducks. The grape hits a scribe. The scribe bows and says, "The fruit has chosen." Your younger sister, by contrast, is chaos incarnate, a whirlwind in gold bangles. She insists she's the reincarnation of a war goddess, and once tried to paint your sandals with crushed berries. As an offering to the god of footpaths. You don't stop her. Honestly, they looked better that way. The palace is big enough that you don't have to share everything. Rooms, toys, tutors, but privacy. That's a foreign concept. Your lessons are observed. Your meals are observed. Your arguments are observed by at least 3 scribes, 2 attendants, and a guard who tries very hard not to laugh when someone calls you a sand-toed melonhead. One morning, you are all summoned to the Hall of Harmony. The name is optimistic. It's where royal siblings are brought for bonding exercises, which is code for learning not to smite each other with ceremonial sticks. Today's activity, group prayer. You're told to chant in unison. Your older brother speaks 3 seconds ahead. You speak 3 seconds behind. Your sister adds animal sounds. The priest looks exhausted. Afterwards, tea. Here is a shared art session. You're all handed clay and told to mold symbols of divine unity. You make a bird, your sister makes a snake, your brother makes a throne. With him on it, you stare at it for a long time, then squish it. Oops, you say. He smiles without smiling. Academic texts suggest that royal children in ancient Egypt were raised collectively, even those from rival maternal lineages. It was thought to promote unity, though historical records suggest it more often promoted gossip, strategic alliances, and the occasional passive, aggressive lotus arrangement. You learn to navigate the tension. When your brothers boast about their sword lessons, you mention the special constellation named after your sneeze. When your sister claims she's the only one who can talk to cats, you agree, then send your favorite cat to nap in your lap anyway. There's a quiet competition in everything. Who's praised first by the high priest? Who wears the shinier amulet? Who gets the largest slice of honey cake? Once, you all raced chariots, many ones pulled by palace servants, pretending to be horses. Your sister won. She declared herself queen of momentum. She got an extra dessert. You've never forgiven physics. But sometimes, something strange happens. Unity, real unity. Like the time your brother stood between you and a grumpy ambassador who mistook you for a servant. Or when you shared a fig with your sister because hers had fallen and rolled into a drainage ditch that smelled suspiciously like old priests. Or when all 3 of you sat by the reflecting pool after a long ritual and just threw pebbles at the same duck. In those moments, you forget the tension, forget the thrones and titles and prophetic dreams. You're just kids. Kids with complicated hairpieces and very few choices, trying to make the best of a childhood wrapped in destiny. But the palace never lets you forget for long. One afternoon, a scribe approaches you privately. He speaks in the hushed tone of someone delivering gossip disguised as advice. Your brother was asking about the northern granary ledgers, he says. You blink. That's not a normal question, not for a 10-year-old. He says it's for learning. The scribe adds quickly, but his eyes say, watch him. You don't know what to do with this information. You don't even know where the northern granary is. But later that night, as you lie in bed under layers of linen and prayers, you stare at the ceiling and wonder if your brother is dreaming about grain or power. The next morning, you smile extra sweetly at him. He smiles back. You both know the game. Neither of you say anything. Your sister enters the room riding the palace cat like a war chariot. She shouts something about a prophecy and throws flower petals at everyone. The moment breaks. You all laugh. Even the scribe chuckles. The cat looks deeply unamused. Siblinghood in the palace is a strange blend of love, rivalry, and political forecasting disguised as bedtime stories. You are told you must love one another. You are told you must trust one another. But you also know, somewhere deep down, that one day, choices will be made, and someone's name will echo louder in the temple halls. For now though, you are still small, still squabbling over lotus desserts, and who gets to pick the story scroll tonight. The future is big, distant, golden, tonight. You just want your own blanket back. Section 9. Nap time is scheduled. That's the first clue. It's not going to be a normal nap. You're escorted to the royal rest chamber, a room designed specifically for small pharaohs to temporarily stop ruling everything. The walls are painted with soft blue lotuses, the ceiling dotted with golden stars. There's a carved lioness watching over your headrest. She's smiling, sort of. She's also missing one ear, which makes her look like she's been through a few questionable nap times herself. Your bed is a marvel. Cedarwood frame, ivory inlays, lion's paw legs. The mattress is stuffed with goose feathers, layered in sheets so finely woven they shimmer in the right light. A priest once told you the bed was made according to a dream a past pharaoh had after sneezing into a scroll. You're not sure what that means, but it does explain the oddly curved footboard. You're dressed in your light linen, a robe so breathable it practically floats. A servant brings a warm cloth to clean your feet. Another brings scented oil. A third stands with a fan, not moving it yet, just ready in case a breeze is needed for dramatic effect. And then the priest of dreams arrives. Yes, You have one of those. He's a quiet man who walks like he's trying not to wake the floor. He carries a bundle of herbs tied with string and hums a song that's either a lullaby or a warning. No one knows. He claims it's the traditional dream, opening melody of a forgotten temple that only reappears in mist. You just think it sounds kind of nice. He waves the herbs around your bed, mutters something about guiding your soul gently into the fields of night, and then checks the alignment of your pillow. This, he insists, is the most important step. The head must tilt slightly toward the western horizon, he says, or else the dreams may get lost on their way home. You once tried napping with your head facing east. You woke up with a sneeze and the conviction that ducks could talk. Ever since, no one argues about pillow direction. Your nurse gently places a small amulet under your mattress. It's shaped like a hedgehog. She says it guards against bad dreams and overly long ceremonies. You believe her, mostly because your worst dream ever involved both of those things. The priest gives you a final blessing. May your breath be light, your dreams be guided, and your soul avoid the crocodile of confusion. Then he leaves, slowly backwards. Like the dream itself might follow him if he turns too fast. You close your eyes. Kind of. You've learned that falling asleep isn't just about being tired. It's a process. First, you must clear your mind. Then you must think noble thoughts, rivers, justice, the proper alignment of obelisks. Finally, you must avoid thinking about whether your brothers are also napping or secretly plotting something involving the fig rations. A servant begins to hum softly. Another fan begins to stir. You drift. Or almost. Because, here's the thing about being a pharaoh, child. Naps are serious business. Dreams aren't just dreams. They're messages, portents, potential divine telegrams from beyond the veil, which is a lot of pressure for someone who still occasionally sleeps hugging a stuffed falcon. Sometimes, you dream of the Nile. It speaks, in your voice. Sometimes, you dream of floating over the pyramids, dropping crumbs on the heads of scribes and laughing like a sky god. Other times, it's just mud, endless mud. You wake up unsure if that was symbolic, or if you just overheard the gardener complaining again. Once, you dreamed of your grandfather sitting on a golden throne in the clouds, telling you to always wash behind your ears. That dream became a temple teaching. The ears must be pure to hear the truth, said the priests. You didn't correct them. Historians still debate how seriously royal dreams were taken. Some believe the dreams of a pharaoh, especially a young one, were used to guide major decisions. One scribe's journal claims a foreign alliance was formed after a dream involving a red ibis and a bowl of soup. The logic was unclear, but the soup was delicious. Back in your room you twitch slightly. A servant notes it. Another adjusts your pillow. You mumble something that sounds like papyrus pigeon. This is carefully recorded on a wax tablet, just in case it means something. Eventually, you wake. Slowly, softly, as if surfacing from honey. The fan has stopped. The room is quiet. Your nurse is sitting nearby, weaving a toy from palm leaves. She smiles when you stir. Welcome back. Divine One, the sun missed you. You sit up blinking. You feel rested, maybe, or maybe just heavier with mystery. Did you dream? She asks. You think, then nod. What was it? You pause, then say, I was flying. But my wings were scrolls. She nods solemnly, very powerful. Later, you hear the dream has been interpreted as a symbol of divine wisdom. A new mural is ordered. It will show you flying over the palace. Scrolls unfurling behind you, blessing the people below with knowledge and aerodynamic grace. You were just trying to reach a mango tree. Section 10. You're not allowed to go anywhere alone. Not even to the garden, not even to the edge of the reflecting pool to poke the water and make fish-shaped ripples. No, everywhere you go, you are accompanied by at least 3 adults. 2, if you're lucky. 5 if someone dreams about rain. But once a week, you are granted a grand privilege. The royal walk. This sounds more majestic than it is. Really, it's a supervised stroll around the outer courtyard of the palace, designed to connect the divine child with the rhythms of nature. Which is an elaborate way of saying, you get to see the ducks. The ducks are the highlight. Before the walk, your sandals are checked. Your skin is anointed with a thin layer of scented oil, not too slippery, not too sticky. Your tunic is changed, just in case any foreign envoys are also strolling their royal toddlers in your direction. You are handed a small scepter, not a real one, of course, just a symbolic mini version carved from wood and inlaid with a single overly proud turquoise, and then it begins. The sun is already high, turning the palace stones warm underfoot. You're surrounded by tall reeds, flowering shrubs, and lazy bees doing slow circles in the air like they're rehearsing for a temple performance. A scribe follows 10 steps behind, scroll in hand, ready to record any profound observations you might make. Look, you say, pointing at a beetle. The scribe gasps. He scribbles furiously. You hear whispers. The Divine One acknowledges rebirth. You were just thinking it looked shiny. Further along the path, a gardener bows as you pass. He's been trimming the same bush for half an hour. You suspect he's just here for the ritual. You wave. He bows again. Lower this time you nod thoughtfully, trying to look like you understand horticulture. Academic scholars often debate the actual autonomy of child pharaohs. Were they puppets, or did their small choices create ripples across the court? In your case, you once chose to walk counterclockwise around a fountain. By the next week, that became the only approved direction. Sunwise, they called it. You just like the view better on that side. The ducks come into view near the temple pond. They are, as usual, doing absolutely nothing of importance, floating, flapping, being ducks. You squat beside the pond, watching them. One of them stares at you. There's a moment of quiet connection. Then it quacks, loudly. Your attendants flinch. You grin. That one has opinions, you say. The scribe nearly faints trying to write it all down. You're offered a few grains to feed them. You toss a handful gently. The ducks respond with a frenzy that borders on divine chaos. One of them nearly climbs the stone edge. Your sister once said they were plotting to form a dynasty. You believe her. Farther along the walk, you reach the listening tree, an old acacia with a trunk so wide you could hide an army of scribes behind it. You are told the tree is sacred, that it hears wishes and delivers them to the wind. You place a hand on the bark, whisper something small, and feel the wood tremble slightly beneath your fingers. What did the Divine One ask for? An attendant breathes. You shrug. More honey cakes. He nods reverently. A humble, profound request. Scholars might one day study the royal walks for clues about your developing psychology, your understanding of power, or your early diplomatic instincts. But if they asked you, you'd just say, I like the ducks. Still, sometimes the walk takes on a different tone. Like today, you're led through a new path, slightly overgrown, shaded by palms, unfamiliar. Part of the expansion, they explain, a symbol of the growing realm. It smells different here. Earthier, older. You feel like you've stumbled into something half asleep. You spot a carving in the wall, worn, ancient, almost swallowed by vines. You pause. Who's that? You ask. The priest beside you hesitates. That is a forgotten prince. He says, from before the unification. You study the carving. It's faded, the features rough, but there's something kind in the eyes. Why forgotten? History is not always generous, the priest replies. You stand there longer than usual. Even the scribe doesn't write anything. For once, silence feels heavier than commentary. Eventually, you're led back to the main path. Past the ducks again, past the gardener, who is now humming. Back toward the great palace doors, where attendants wait with cool cloths and fresh sandals. As you reach the steps, you pause, glance back at the tree, at the ducks, at the path with the old prince. Can people remember something, even if it's not written down? You ask your nurse quietly. She smiles. Yes, that's why we have stories. You nod. Then you ask for 2 honey cakes. She laughs. Just one today. You consider staging a royal protest. But the ducks are watching, and you have a reputation to maintain. Section 11. There's a room in the palace where no one speaks above a whisper. Not because it's sacred, not exactly, but because it's filled with scrolls, and everyone is too terrified of sneezing on ancient papyrus that predates the concept of breakfast. This is the Royal Archive. And today, you're allowed inside. Well, technically, you are invited to witness the scribal legacy of the 2 lands. Which sounds impressive, until you realize it means sitting on a cushion while grown men argue over whether a particular cartouche means victory of the west wind or accidental giraffe festival. The room smells like old ink, melted wax, and a faint persistent trace of librarian panic. Shelves rise higher than most trees. Scrolls are tucked into every crevice, bound in colored string, labeled in impossibly tiny script. One scroll is rumored to have caused a war. Another supposedly contains a recipe for eternal youth, though the last person who read it just ended up with shinier knees. You're seated with ceremonial pomp, a cushion plumped just right, a small cup of sweetened date milk placed beside you. The head archivist bows so deeply, he nearly headbutts the floor. The Divine One honors our letters. He whispers. You nod, even though you're mostly excited about the milk. The scribes begin to work. One of them reads aloud from the Book of Heavenly Cattle. Another transcribes a hymn in 5 variations, none of which rhyme. A third is carefully redrawing a map of the underworld, including updated traffic routes for the dead. You listen. You squirm. You count how many times the inkpot gets refilled. It's 7. Eventually, you're allowed to touch a scroll. Very carefully, with 2 attendants, holding your elbows like you're made of eggshells. The scroll is old, cracked at the edges, its writing faded but still legible. It tells the story of a forgotten queen who once ruled by cleverness alone. No magic, no armies. Just wit. You like her immediately. Why don't people talk about her more? You ask. The head archivist adjusts his wig. She was inconvenient to the storytellers of her time. That sounds suspiciously familiar. Modern scholars believe the archives of ancient Egypt weren't just record-keeping hubs, they were curated, controlled, shaped to support whichever version of history the current ruler found most useful. Truth, as it turns out, was often a matter of lighting and good handwriting. Back in the archive, you ask to see the scroll again. The queen's name is Anet. You repeat it quietly. Ah, Net. One scribe nods, another frowns. It is not a name often spoken aloud, he says. You decide that's silly. You say it 3 more times, just to be sure she hears it wherever she is. Later, you are shown how ink is made, soot, gum, and water mixed with slow, reverent strokes. You're offered a reed pen, and under the watchful gaze of 15 adults, you write your name. It looks a little like yam and a little like royal lizard, but everyone claps anyway. One scribe weeps. The most curious part of the room is the wall of speculation. No one calls it that, officially, but that's what it is. A set of shelves holding scrolls too controversial, too incomplete, or just too weird to be declared canonical. One contains drawings of giant flying boats. Another suggests the Nile occasionally flows backwards, but only during festivals. And one, your favorite, features a poem supposedly written by a crocodile. You ask if any of it is true. The head archivist smiles tightly. History is written by those with the ink. You spend the rest of the afternoon staring at the shelves, wondering how much of your own story is already being written somewhere. Right now, a scribe is probably documenting your expression as you sip date milk. The divine one pondered deeply, he might write, also hiccuped. As the sun shifts and shadows stretch across the stone floor, the scrolls are gently returned to their compartments. The priests sing a short hymn to the god of language. You're not allowed to join, but you hum along anyway. Your pitch is terrible. One scribe says it adds texture. Before leaving, you glance back at the queen's scroll. Anet, clever ruler, quiet rebel. You feel a sudden urge to ask more about her, but everyone's already bowing again, guiding you back to your daily schedule. You decide something in that moment. You'll ask to read her scroll again tomorrow. And again after that you'll make sure someone remembers. Because stories, like ducks, are stubborn. They refuse to disappear if someone keeps feeding them. And you are very good at feeding things. Section 12. Evening arrives not like a sudden drop of darkness, but like a slow golden curtain being pulled across the sky. By the time you reach your bathing chamber, the air is warm with sunset and smells faintly of citrus, cedar, and the sweetly roasted something wafting from the palace kitchens. Your bath, of course, has already been prepared, but calling it a bath feels like calling the Great Pyramid a pile of well-placed rocks. This is an event. First, you're escorted into the purification room, a softly lit, echoey hall with polished stone floors that feel cool beneath your soles. 2 servants unfasten your robe with the kind of care usually reserved for sacred scrolls. Another begins to hum a song about the lotus blooming at dusk. You suspect she made it up on the spot. But you're not complaining. It's catchy. The bath itself is a shallow pool, carved from pink granite, inlaid with images of water gods, fish, and curiously, a slightly annoyed frog. Warm water is scented with oils of myrrh, sandalwood, and a rare imported blossom that smells suspiciously like overripe fruit, but is apparently very fashionable among elite noses. You step in, slowly, because it's not just about getting clean, it's about preparing your body for night, and more importantly, for dreams. A priest once told you, nighttime is when the body returns to the gods to report how you used it, which is a lot to think about when you are trying not to slip on the underwater lion tile. 2 attendants gently pour warm water over your head. You close your eyes. For a moment, you pretend you're a river, flowing, stretching, turning quietly toward stars. A third attendant starts scrubbing you with a ball of palm fiber dipped in imported Nubian salt. To remove the dust of day and the touch of lies, she says. You giggle, it tickles. A fourth combs through your hair with a tiny ivory rake, another hums in harmony with the lotus song. There's a rhythm to it all. Scrub, pour, rinse, praise. The Divine One has strong ankles. Someone remarks. You lift one to inspect. Looks like a regular ankle to you, but you nod solemnly. May they carry you far, the attendant adds. You resist the urge to splash them. Academic records suggest that royal bathing was not merely about hygiene, but about restoration, renewal, and symbolic cleansing. Inscriptions from temple walls reference nighttime ablutions as rituals of rebirth, where the young god, that's, you prepares to die to the sun and rise with it again in the morning. Of course, they leave out the part where you hiccup from the steam and someone panics that it's a sign of divine unrest. After the soak, you're lifted out by two strong-armed servants, who wrap you in linens so soft they might be woven from whispers. You're dabbed dry, powdered lightly with crushed lotus petal dust, which, side note, gets everywhere, and anointed with a series of oils, almond for the skin, blue lotus for dreams, and a drop of something called Pharaoh's breath. That smells like cinnamon and ambition. Then comes the hair ritual. Your curls are carefully twisted into neat coils, each secured with tiny gold pins shaped like falcons and stars. You catch a glimpse of yourself in the polished bronze mirror. For a split second you don't recognize the child looking back, not because you look different, but because you look exactly like every carving of a god-child you've ever seen. You blink, the image blinks back, and then your sister bursts in. She's wearing her bathrobe backward, and has smeared fig paste across her cheeks like war paint. I'm the goddess of bedtime resistance, she announces, waving a toothbrush like a dagger. Everyone freezes. You burst out laughing. The attendants look horrified. One whispers, an omen? Another says, a warning. A third nods, a prophecy fulfilled. Your sister grins, wipes fig on your arm, and dashes out. You love her, mostly. After the hair is secured and the laughter fades, you're dressed in your nighttime robes, white linen, embroidered hem, symbols of the moon and stars stitched in silver thread across your chest. You're told they protect your dreams from wandering too far into the underworld. You nod, though you're pretty sure the cat sleeping on your bed does most of that work anyway. As you are being led from the bath chamber, you hear a servant whisper. Clean as the dawn. Another replies, soft as new papyrus. A third adds, scented like a letter to the gods. You wonder if they have a contest going. Before returning to your room, you pass by the sacred flame, a brazier that burns fragrant herbs through the night to keep your spirit rooted. You watch it flicker, dancing like it knows something you don't. You bow slightly just in case, and then you yawn. A mighty, royal, temple-worthy yawn. The attendants pause, reverently. It is time, says one. You nod. You're clean. You're sacred. You're sleepy. And somewhere out there, under the same stars painted on your ceiling, the world quietly prepares itself for the dreams of a child who bathes in lotus and walks like a river. Section 13. There are bedtime clothes, and then there is the royal ensemble for nocturnal repose. You know this because every evening, at roughly the same time the palace cats begin their second most dramatic yawn cycle, a whole team assembles at your chamber door for what is essentially a miniature fashion show, but with less walking and more reverence. Tonight is no exception. First comes the garment bearer, holding up your sleep tunic like it's the Ark of the Covenant. It's made of linen so fine, it's practically transparent if you squint. Though of course, nobody squints in your presence. The garment is embroidered with silver thread forming protective glyphs, ankhs, falcons, crescent moons, and one symbol you swear looks suspiciously like a duck. For divine comfort, they explain. You do not question the duck. Then comes the belt, not for function, but for symbolism. It's soft, dyed with crushed pomegranate, and inscribed with a prayer to Heka, the god of magic. One attendant explains that this ensures your dreams won't be stolen by wandering spirits. Another says it makes sure you don't roll out of bed. Equally important, the sandals are next, which is confusing because you are going to sleep. But apparently, sacred feet should never touch the cold floor unadorned, even for the 3 steps between your bed and your blanket. They're soft, gold, trimmed, and fastened with a reverent silence that suggests each toe is about to deliver royal wisdom. Are the sandals dreaming too? You ask. A scribe writes that down. The Divine One contemplates footwear sentience. A few modern archaeologists believe these elaborate bedtime rituals served both as comfort and quiet instruction, each detail reinforcing status, myth, and identity. You just like how the sleeves swish when you spin. You are not done. Next come the amulets. The first is placed over your heart, a carved lapis scarab meant to guard your soul as it wanders. The second is a small ivory crocodile, to appease Sobek should he visit your waters. The third is the most curious, a tiny silver hedgehog with a missing leg. A family heirloom. Your nurse says, "Very lucky." You nod because what else do you say to a three-legged hedgehog charm? Finally, the crown. Well, not the big one. Not the public throne. Sitting, I commend, the river's crown. This one is a soft circlet of braided thread and moonstones, meant to be worn in dreams. So the gods recognize you when they see you, the priest whispers. You place it gently on your head. It's a little itchy, you don't mind. The final step is the tuck. In ceremony. Yes, that's what they call it. 4 attendants approach your bed in perfect synchronization. One fluffs the lotus, stuffed pillow. One adjusts the curtain of hanging beads at the foot. One lights the final dream, scented oil. Tonight's blend is myrrh, blue lotus, and something labeled simply as soft wind. The last one smooths the linen over you as if covering a precious artifact. You are swaddled like a statue, but somehow, it feels safe. Then comes the priest. He's the same one from your earlier nap, though somehow more mysterious at night. He hums a melody that loops like a lullaby. He sprinkles powdered shell across the threshold. He whispers a dream invocation in a language so old it might as well be moonlight, and then he pauses. "Divine One," he says softly, "what do you hope to dream tonight?" You think, "A giant date cake," you say. That talks. He doesn't blink. May it be wise. There's a brief silence. Then he places a small reed scroll under your pillow. "For guidance," he says. "You've never opened one. They're not for reading, they're for presence." Academic circles still debate what these bedtime rituals were meant to achieve. Some say it was spiritual armor. Others say it was gentle indoctrination. A few argue it was just a really fancy way to feel cozy. You think it's a little of all three. As everyone finishes their tasks and the room quiets, you're left with soft candlelight, the scent of sleep, and the faint rustle of your linen gown. You close your eyes. Then open one. Is the duck symbol really necessary? You whisper to your nurse. She leans in. Ducks are sacred. You believe her. It's easier that way. Just before the final candle is extinguished, your cat leaps onto the bed. She circles once, twice, and then flops dramatically across your legs like a furry guardian of dreams. No one questions her. She outranks most officials. "Let the divine rest, be undisturbed," someone says. And with that, the chamber dims. The moonlight spills through the carved window, slits in perfect alignment. The night begins its long, slow song. And you drift, wrapped in linen. Duck, approved. Hedgehog, protected, and ready for whatever strange golden dream dares to find a pharaoh, child wearing a moonstone crown. Section 14. The priest arrives just before you're fully asleep. Again, you pretend not to notice. Eyes closed, breathing soft. One arm tucked under the hedgehog amulet like it's your most trustworthy advisor. But he knows. He always knows. His sandals make no sound on the polished stone, but the air shifts when he enters, like the room itself inhales. He approaches the foot of your bed and kneels, placing a small clay bowl on the floor. Inside it, ground myrrh, a feather, and a sliver of obsidian shaped like an eyelid. The bowl will stay there all night. It's meant to catch any loose pieces of dream that fall out while you are traveling, because, according to him, you travel every night, you do not sleep. "Divine One," he said once. "You voyage." And voyage you do. Tonight, as the last breeze slips past your curtain, and the soft flicker of the sacred oil fades into darkness, the priest begins the ritual of storying the soul. This is what they call the bedtime blessing. Not telling a story, not reading a scroll. No storying. As in shaping you into one, through words, like you are half child, half scroll, ready to be inscribed by sacred syllables before your spirit sets sail. He begins to speak, slowly, calmly, as if each word is being drawn from a river at dusk. "Tonight," he says, "we ask the gods to let the Divine One drift through the dreamland safely, to learn without wounding, to listen without forgetting, to see what is hidden but not yet dangerous." You peek one eye open. He's holding a fan, not to cool you, but to stir the air. "Dreams prefer movement," he once said. "They don't like stale rooms." Then he sings, or something close to it. It's not a song you'd hum in the bath. It's low, long like a reed flute being played underwater. The rhythm matches your breath. Maybe it's guiding your breath. It's hard to tell where you end and the air begins. And just as your mind begins to wander, he stops. Time, he whispers, for the scroll of the pillow. It's not a real scroll, not in the wax and ink sense. This is more ceremonial, a metaphor with very dedicated branding. The idea is that the pillow stuffed with sacred down, wrapped in linen that touched temple fire, will unfold like a scroll the moment your head touches it. You wonder if they rehearse this language, but as your head sinks into the pillow, you have to admit, it does feel like a scroll, not stiff, but meaningful. Every little crease and fold feels intentional, like you are laying your mind down on history itself. The priest murmurs a name, not yours. Not a god's, a name you don't recognize. He says it 3 times. You whisper, "What does that mean?" He replies, "A traveler you might meet." You nod, then stop yourself, because nodding while trying to fall asleep is a trap. Scholars speculate that these kinds of rituals were meant to reinforce power, encode lessons, and maintain spiritual clarity in a world ruled by ceremony. But the truth is, sometimes you're just scared of dreams. They're big and strange, and sometimes they come true, like the one where the Nile turned purple, and 2 weeks later, the court painter switched to a new batch of dyes and ruined an entire temple mural. Or the one where your sister floated above her bed yelling about frogs, and the next morning, 3 frogs appeared under her breakfast table. Coincidence? Maybe. But no one eats in that corner anymore. Tonight, you feel something different. Like your dreams are watching you back. You pull the covers higher, hedgehog still under your hand. You think about the amulets, the fan, the scroll under your pillow. You think about that one time your nurse whispered that the stars are just holes in the ceiling of the dream world, and you nearly cried because you thought it meant someone could fall through. The priest places a final item at your bedside, a small bowl of crushed lavender and crushed pearl. It's not for smelling, it's to absorb bad prophecies before they stick. You wonder how many bad prophecies you've already stepped in. As he turns to leave, he says the final words of the night. May your dreams be loud where they must be, and soft where they can. He walks backward, as always, just in case, the door shuts. The silence that follows isn't empty, it's full, like the kind of silence that knows what you're about to dream, and is holding its breath in anticipation. You close your eyes, for real this time. You're ready to voyage, or maybe just nap like a very fancy, very anxious cloud. Either way, the scroll of the pillow waits. Section 15 tonight. The stars are showing off. You can tell by the way the light spills across your chamber walls in perfect speckled streaks. Like the sky dropped a basket of tiny silver seeds just for you. The moon hangs like a polished plate above the open skylight, and the constellations are lined up like a quiet audience. And you are expected to study them, not just admire, not simply gaze and drift off like a dreamy cat curled in moonbeams. No, this is your nightly astral observation, a sacred duty bestowed upon you, as heir to the sun and apprentice of the sky. Which sounds elegant, until you remember it. Means staying awake a little longer, while a stern priest points at stars and quizzes you about their moods. You sit on a cushioned bench in your open-roofed observatory, a rounded terrace just above your sleeping quarters. Your cat, ever loyal and moderately disinterested, curls beside you. Someone has placed a honey cake on the ledge. You're not allowed to eat it yet, it's offering, adjacent. The priest arrives with a long staff tipped with copper. He doesn't use it for walking, he uses it for pointing. First, he gestures towards Sopdet, the star that announces the flooding of the Nile. What does she whisper to the river? He asks. You pause, you squint. You reply, that it's time to dance. He blinks, then he nods. Acceptable. He moves on to the next, Sa, the father of the gods, glittering in the east. And him. You answer without hesitation. He watches our dreams so they don't drift too far. A lie, a guess, a truth whispered to you in your sleep last week. Hard to say, but he accepts it. Modern historians debate how much astronomical knowledge young royals were truly expected to master. Some say they learned star paths to track seasons. Others argue it was mostly symbolic, a performance of wisdom rather than its actual practice. You think the stars are just a really nice way to feel small. The priest traces an imaginary line from star to star, forming a crocodile in the sky. That one, he says, protects us from unclean spirits. You frown. I thought the hedgehog did that. He doesn't respond, just raises an eyebrow. You take the hint, layered defense systems. Next, you're handed a small bronze disc, a nocturnal chart, they call it. You spin it carefully, aligning constellations with temple dates. Tonight is favorable for dreams of guidance, the priest says. Unfavorable for dreams of geometry. You sigh in relief. You had a dream about triangular camels once. You still haven't recovered. As part of the observation ritual, you must make a wish, but not just any wish. A witnessed wish, one that the stars can hear, and the priest can record. You think. Then you say, I wish to remember what I forget in the morning. The priest nods. He doesn't write it down. He just looks up, as if passing it along to someone in the higher seating. Your cat sneezes. This, according to the priest, is an omen of divine approval. You're pretty sure she just has dust in her nose, but you nod anyway. Eventually, the stars shift position. The air grows cooler. A servant arrives with a cup of warm hibiscus and honey, not the cake, which has now mysteriously vanished. You suspect the cat. As you prepare to leave the terrace, the priest places a small bead in your palm. It's obsidian, polished, with a single groove down the center. Place it under your tongue before sleep, he says. It will make your dreams more truthful. You raise an eyebrow, or make me choke. He shrugs. Either way, the gods will notice. You do not place it under your tongue. You slip it under your pillow instead. The gods can investigate it there. As you step back into your chamber, the stars follow you, reflected now in the polished stone floor, dancing across your linens, hiding in the folds of your tunic. You feel like you are carrying them, like you swallowed a little piece of night and it's glowing behind your eyes. The priest bows low. The heavens are pleased, he says. Sleep as though you have already succeeded. You nod, then glance at your cat. Did you take the cake? She yawns, which is neither confirmation nor denial. And as you slide beneath the covers once more, the constellations blink at you from above. Maybe just stars, maybe old gods in disguise, maybe little holes in the sky where dreams slip in and out. You close your eyes, and whisper to no one, I remember. Even if you don't, not yet. Section 16. You are awakened. Not by sound, not by touch, but by the quiet pressure of being watched. Not in a scary way, more like observed, curiously, like a turtle by a philosopher. Your eyes flutter open to soft candlelight, the hush of linen curtains swaying gently, and a figure seated beside your bed, sipping something that smells suspiciously like honey and judgment. It's your grandmother, or, as everyone else calls her, the living pillar of time. She doesn't visit often. Not because she doesn't love you, but because she claims dreams should belong to the young, and she already used up 3 lifetimes worth. But when she does appear in your chamber in the middle of the night, wrapped in indigo robes, her hair like a cloud of moonlight, and her gaze sharp enough to slice fruit, everyone makes room. And you? You sit up straighter than a temple column. Well, she says, handing you a cup of warm milk, have you met the talking crocodile yet? You blink. Not yet. She nods, satisfied. You're still on the easy levels. Tonight, she has come to give you something sacred, the story that is not written, not recorded in papyrus, not carved into limestone, not whispered by priests. It's passed mouth to mouth, across generations. Only when the stars feel especially chatty, you lean forward, eager. She begins. There was once a pharaoh who ruled not with armies, nor wealth, nor spells, but with questions. Endless questions. He asked the Nile why it curved. He asked the sun what it feared. He asked the pyramids what they forgot. You interrupt. What did they say? She raises an eyebrow. If I told you, it wouldn't be a question anymore. You grin. She continues. This pharaoh, she says, never built a temple, never raised a monument, but people followed him anyway, because wherever he went, he asked them questions too. What makes you brave? What do you hide from your dreams? What flavor should laughter be? And as the years passed, he didn't grow older, just deeper, until one day, he disappeared. Left only a scroll with a single sentence. Ask until the silence tells the truth. Your grandmother finishes her milk. That's your inheritance, she says. You stare at her. A riddle? A riddle, she confirms. And a warm bed. Academic records suggest that elder members of royal families, especially matriarchs, were revered not just as caretakers, but as spiritual guides. Oral tradition was considered sacred. Memory, in these moments, was more valuable than gold. You believe it. Your grandmother brushes a hand across your forehead. Her fingers are cool, smelling faintly of mint, and whatever wisdom smells like. I saw you in my dream last night, she says softly. You blink. What was I doing? Laughing loudly while the stars bowed. You nod slowly. That checks out. She chuckles. Then adds, and wearing a hat made of grapes. You pause. Less checks out. She stands, slowly, her joints cracking like polite thunder. Dreams are messages wrapped in riddles, she says. Your job is not to solve them, just to respect their timing. At the door, she pauses. Oh, and if the crocodile does talk, listen, but do not agree to any trades. You make a mental note. As she disappears into the hallway, trailing scent and silence, you settle back into bed. The pillow has warmed again. The hedgehog is still tucked under your arm. Your cat has migrated to the pillow, half smothering your ear with fur. And the story lingers. Not written, not official, but echoing somewhere just behind your ribs. You whisper to yourself. Ask until the silence tells the truth. The stars outside shift again. And you, the heir to 1,000 questions, fall asleep wondering if dreams have doors, and whether yours might be slightly ajar tonight. Section 17. Tonight, you are supposed to stay in bed. But try telling that to the falcon. It starts with a rustle, then a soft thump on the windowsill. By the time you sit up, half asleep, hair fluffed like a startled dandelion. There it is, a falcon, staring at you like you forgot a very important appointment. You whisper, shouldn't you be somewhere holy? The falcon tilts its head. A second later, a scroll drops from its claw right onto your blanket. Not dramatic, not magical, more like someone throwing a grocery list through a window. You fumble it open. 3 symbols, a crescent moon, an open eye, and a tiny foot. You blink. A bedtime treasure hunt. The falcon caws softly, flaps once, and vanishes into the night. You glance around. Everyone is asleep. The palace is quiet. Too quiet for your age and status. Technically, you're guarded at all hours, but your nurse is snoring under a pile of blankets, and the hallway torch has gone out. This could be your moment. Your cat lifts her head. You whisper, "You coming?" She yawns, which means yes. Probably. So, barefoot and still in your moon-stitched sleep tunic, you slip from your bed and step into the corridor. The floor is cool stone. Your feet make small, sacred slaps with each step. You feel like a wandering breeze with royal clearance. First stop, the crescent moon. You know where that is, the courtyard fountain, designed in the shape of a crescent, always sparkling under the stars. When you arrive, a low torch flickers to life, as if summoned by your presence. Floating in the water, a lotus flower, glowing faintly, with a bead of gold inside. You scoop it up. It's warm. Inscribed on the bead, another symbol. An eye leading you to, you gasp, the Library of Dreams. It's a secret room, mostly used by scholars, filled with scrolls that were never finished. Stories half-written. Prophecies nobody dared to confirm. Even lullabies too strange for regular ears. You've only seen it once. When you were very small and hiding from a goat. The door creaks open for you. Inside, thousands of scrolls, each tied with string dyed in different moon phases. You run your finger along the edges. One scroll pulses faintly beneath your touch. You untie it, not words, pictures, drawings of footsteps, your feet, exactly, walking across a painted floor. The final image shows a hidden chamber beneath the palace, one you've never seen. The cat huffs beside you. You whisper, "Okay, just a quick look." So begins your descent, a secret stairwell behind the dream library. Steps carved so long ago the stone has been worn soft. You count 20, 30, 37, each number whispered like a spell. At the bottom, a small room. Inside, nothing but sand, perfect, undisturbed sand, and at the center, a pedestal, holding a small mirror. You step closer. The mirror doesn't reflect you. Instead, it shows a bed. Your bed empty, except there, curled where your body should be, a glowing shape, gentle, light, blue, flickering like moonlight in water. Your your life force, still asleep, still dreaming. You stare. The cat nudges your leg. You suddenly understand. This room isn't for finding treasure, it is the treasure. A place to remember that part of you wanders further than your body ever will, that even as you explore symbols and secret chambers, some part of you is always, still, dreaming, reporting, listening. You smile softly. "Okay," you whisper. "I get it." You place the scroll back down. You step out, you return. Back through the corridor, past the fountain into your room. The falcon is gone. The scroll is gone. But your bed, your sweet, waiting bed, is warm again, and the mirror in your mind still holds the image of that blue light version of you curled up like a promise. You slide under the covers. Your cat curls into the space above your head like a second crown. And as you drift off again, you whisper, "Even my dreams have dreams." Outside, the stars blink somewhere. The falcon flies. And below, the sand in the hidden room remains perfectly undisturbed, waiting. Section 18. Tonight. Your dreams don't wait for you. They arrive early. Loud wearing bells. One moment, you're floating gently through sleep, wrapped in the warmth of linens and lavender. The next, you're standing in a vast hall of columns, each carved with glowing hieroglyphs that rearrange themselves whenever you blink. You say, "Oh no, it's a logic dream." A voice answers from the shadows, "No, child, it's a trial of symbols." Of course it is. Because apparently, even in sleep, being a young pharaoh comes with exams. A tall figure steps forward, cloaked in starlight, face hidden behind a golden ibis mask. Thoth, god of wisdom. Or at least a dream version of him. You're not entirely sure. Dream gods have blurry HR files. He gestures toward 3 doors. One carved with a jackal, one with a harp, one with an onion. You hesitate. He speaks. Choose the truth. You narrow your eyes. The onion? Interesting. He replies unhelpfully. Academic scribes argue whether young royals were trained to read and interpret symbols from a young age, to instill deeper layers of spiritual literacy. Others suggest it was all just ceremonial fluff, designed to make bedtime more theatrical. You, currently standing in front of a cryptic produce puzzle, are inclined to vote both. You choose the harp. The door swings open without a sound. Inside, a room filled with floating scrolls, each humming like bees. A voice booms from nowhere. Find the one that remembers your first question. You squint. First question, ever. You begin to wade through the scrolls. Some whisper, others hum lullabies in languages you barely recognize. One tries to bite your fingers. You swat it. Finally, a scroll drifts into your hands. It reads, "Where do clouds sleep?" You gasp. You were 3. You asked that during breakfast, between bites of fig. No one answered. Everyone just laughed. The scroll wraps gently around your wrist. Another doorway opens. Inside, a garden, lit by moonlight, filled with statues of people you've never met, but who somehow feel familiar. Each one has your eyes, or your smile, or your very specific dislike for overcooked lentils. You hear the voice again. These are possible versions of you, one for every path not chosen. You blink. One version is taller, holding a staff. One is barefoot, laughing in the rain. One sits in stillness, covered in golden tattoos. They turn to look at you, not in jealousy, not in blame, but in quiet recognition, like mirrors with memories. You whisper, "Do I become you?" They smile and sink, and disappear. When you wake again, gasping just slightly, the room is calm. Your pillow is warm. The cat has migrated to your chest and is snoring softly, one paw twitching in the dream chase of a very unbothered mouse. You sit up slowly. There's something in your palm. A small carved charm, a harp made from pale wood. You stare at it. The doors were a dream. The test wasn't real. Right? You place the charm beside your pillow. You lie back down, heart still thumping with leftover awe. You pull the covers up and stare at the ceiling stars. Some seem closer now. Where do clouds sleep? You whisper again. A breeze rustles your curtain. And somewhere, a voice, not yours, says, "In the hearts of those who ask." You smile. Even your dreams are starting to talk back. Section 19. Some nights are quiet. This one isn't. It begins with a creak, a slow, old wood groan from the corridor outside your chamber. Then a cough. Then, whispers. Not ghostly, not terrifying, just unmistakably adult. You're still half asleep, buried under a royal mound of lotus, scented blankets, when you hear your name. Not your public name. Not the long, flourished, sun-drenched one with 20 syllables and a falcon in it. No, your real name. The short one your mother uses when she tucks you in, or when she's pretending you didn't just knock over a ceremonial vase with a wooden camel. You sit up. The voices are in the hallway, faint, serious. And that's when you realize the grown-ups are having a meeting. At night, which, in the royal world, only means one thing. Something's happened. You sneak out of bed. Not for the first time this week, and press your ear to the door. Nothing. Just more muffled voices, like underwater politics. Your cat glances at you. This time she doesn't follow. She just flicks her tail in that "I warned you about these night meetings" kind of way. Still, you slide the door open and tiptoe into the hall, heart pounding like a distant drum. You're not supposed to be here, not because you're a child, but because the palace has rules. Rules about who gets to hear certain truths, and when. But curiosity outranks sleep tonight. At the end of the corridor, the antechamber glows with torchlight. Inside, your advisors, priests, and generals, and your mother. She stands tall, gold shimmer across her arms, and she's not smiling. On the table in front of them, a scroll, sealed, broken. Read, now lying there like a papyrus thunderbolt. You can't hear everything, but a few words slip through. Border tension. Nile overflow. Temple dreams. Then a pause. The young one must be told, eventually. You inhale sharply, they're talking about you. And suddenly you're not just a child sneaking out of bed. You're a pharaoh. In training, caught in the undertow of the kingdom's tides. Academic debate rages over how much real influence child rulers held in ancient Egypt. Some argue they were puppets of powerful regents. Others believe they held a quiet, symbolic authority, shaping policy simply by being present. Tonight, your presence is uninvited, but undeniable. You don't enter the room. You don't need to. You know enough. You retreat quietly, footsteps lighter than mist, and return to your chamber. When you climb back into bed, your hands are trembling. Not from fear, exactly, but from the weight of knowing, of understanding that your dreams are not your own. That while you sleep, the world does not. Your nurse stirs. Bad dream. You nod. She hums. Good, that means it didn't happen. She wraps the blanket tighter around you, tucks a curl behind your ear, and whispers a lullaby half forgotten by most of the palace. You recognize it from when you were very small. It talks about the moon riding a boat across the sky, leaving behind pearls of courage in children's pillows. You touch your pillow. Just feathers, and maybe a few pearls. As sleep returns, you hold on to one thought. Tomorrow, you may be a ruler, but tonight, you are still someone's child. And for one more hour, that's enough. Section 20. The night has one last secret. You're deep asleep now, so deep that even your own name feels like a distant drumbeat. Your body lies still, curled under layers of sacred linen. But your mind is elsewhere, floating gently through the quiet corridors of dreams. And in that strange, soft place between sleep and morning, something changes. A shift, a presence. You find yourself standing once again in the chamber of reflections, the dream version, where the floor is polished obsidian and the ceiling is the night sky itself. You look down and see your reflection. Only, it's not quite you. It's you tomorrow. A little taller, a little steadier, wearing the crown not as a costume, but as something earned. Your reflection smiles, not with arrogance, but with peace. You reach out your hand, and the glass of the floor ripples. A soft voice, not yours, but familiar, speaks. Who you are becoming is already waiting. You nod. Somehow, you understand. Suddenly, a door appears in the wall, carved from alabaster, shimmering with starlight and papyrus ink. It's slightly open. From beyond it comes the scent of fig trees, sand, and something older than memory. Do you walk through? Not yet. First, you turn around. Behind you stands a line of faces, those you've dreamed of, those you've spoken with, those who shaped your nights and stood at your side. The priest with his scrolls, your grandmother and her laughter, your cat with a slightly tilted crown, even the falcon perched quietly, watching. They nod. You are not alone. You step forward, and as you cross the threshold, something warm floods your chest. Not fire, not light. Something quieter. Readiness. Historians say ancient Egyptian sleep wasn't just for rest, it was considered a bridge. A place where the soul could be trained, challenged, strengthened, and whispered to by gods too subtle for waking hours. And tonight, the gods whispered to you. The door closes behind you with no sound. The stars blink once, then settle. And then, softly, gently, you wake up. Back in your chamber, the sun hasn't risen yet, but the sky has begun to exhale. You lie still, holding the silence like a secret. You feel different. You feel the same. Outside, the first priest of the morning is already lighting the temple's flame. Today, you'll rise and go through your routines. You'll smile through the breakfast ceremony. You'll pretend not to roll your eyes during the incense ritual. But something inside you will be stronger. Because last night, your dreams trained you. Last night, your comfort zone shifted. Last night, you were reminded that being a young pharaoh isn't about perfection, it's about presence. And tonight, the stars will return, the doors will reopen. And your dreams, your wild, glowing, sandal-wearing dreams, will be waiting. So now, as your breath slows and the world quiets around you, feel the weight of the day soften. The candles burn low. The cat has long since curled into your pillow. Even the stars have started to whisper less, like they're giving you space to rest. Everything that needed to happen tonight happened. You don't need to figure anything out right now. You don't need to remember every symbol or solve every riddle. That part of the story is sleeping too. Gently beside you, let the questions rest. Let the palace breathe without you for a little while. Your heartbeat is steady. The sky is turning its face slowly toward morning, but it hasn't quite left the dream world yet. You're still there, floating just a little, like a feather caught between sleep and starlight. You did well, little pharaoh. You listened. You wandered, you asked, and now you sleep.